Today we're tackling something really complex and, well, deeply human. Why relationships sometimes break down.
Right. And often it's not the big dramatic blow-ups people assume, is it?
Exactly. We tend to think, infidelity, a huge betrayal, maybe financial ruin, but the sources we've looked at today suggest something much quieter,
Yeah.
sneakier almost.
That's the word for it. Insidious.
We've got this really powerful deep dive into what are called the 12 silent killers of relationships. These are the subtle things, everyday behaviors, maybe small shifts in how you pay attention or your attitude, things that slowly, almost without you noticing, wear away at the connection.
Until one day it just feels gone.
Just gone.
And that's the key thing here, isn't it? Most couples don't consciously decide, okay, let's wreck this. It's usually passive. It happens quietly in the background while, life is happening.
Right.
Our material really zeroes in on the routine stuff, the mundane habits that creep in after that initial, honeymoon phase fades. Think of a relationship like a complex machine. It often doesn't break because of one massive crash. It's the small routine failures. The sources use this great comparison, like rust on metal.
Ah, I like that. Rust on metal.
Yeah. Slow, persistent erosion, neglect, tiny cracks. They just eat away at that original excitement and commitment.
That analogy really hits home because it shows it's continuous, right? It's not a single event. It's the whole environment allowing decay.
It's vice.
So our mission today is to really drag these 12 specific silent behaviors out into the open.
Yeah, let's do it.
Because these are the things most of us, honestly, probably don't even realize we're doing until the damage feels, well, maybe irreversible.
That's about awareness, fundamentally.
Yes. We're kind of building a roadmap for being proactive about relationship health. The idea is simply that knowing is the first, most vital step towards change. We don't want to wait for the explosion, and we need to spot the rust now.
Well said. So let's dive right in. Section 1 focuses on what we're calling the erosion of foundation. These are the silent faders.
Okay, silent faders. I like that.
These are mostly behaviors that signal indifference. It's that subtle pulling back of effort that undermines appreciation, respect, and that ongoing investment.
Makes sense.
And we'll start with maybe the most common and possibly the most insidious one. Behavior number 1, taking your partner for granted.
Ah, yes. This one feels huge. The mechanism described is so simple, but wow, it's devastating.
It really is.
Early on, everything's new, right? Every little gesture, a shared joke, making their favorite meal, a compliment. You notice it. You say thank you. You say I love you. It feels natural.
Because it is natural then. You're paying attention.
Yeah.
But then time passes. You get comfortable. Routine sets in.
And you just stop noticing. Stop noticing those small, consistent efforts they make.
Exactly. And we're not just talking forgetting anniversaries, though. That's part of it, too. It's the partner who always empties the dishwasher, Or the one who remembers to fill the car up with Cass.
Or, like the source said, the one who makes your coffee just right every single morning before you're even awake.
Those things, those routine acts, when they become expected, they just become invisible. And that, according to the material, is the absolute core of taking someone for granted. It's the slow fading of appreciation.
And if those actions become invisible, then the person doing them starts to feel invisible too, right?
Absolutely. That's the direct consequence. When appreciation disappears, affection is almost always the next thing to go. It has to, really.
Yeah, I can see that.
Think about it from their side. If you constantly feel like your efforts, your time, your thought, your energy are just unseen, maybe unvalued, why would you keep pouring from that cup?
The well runs dry.
It does. And the material has this really chilling warning, actually, about looking elsewhere for that validation.
Oh.
It says, basically, the simplest way to keep love alive is to never stop showing gratitude. And this is the kicker, when you stop showing it, someone else eventually will.
Wow. That's blunt.
Yes. But it makes sense. An external source, maybe a coworker, a new friend, they step in and notice what's being ignored at home. They fill that emotional vacuum.
So the responsibility is squarely on us in the relationship. Gratitude isn't just manners, it's like essential fuel.
Vital nutrient is a good way to put it.
Okay, so that's the fate of appreciation.
Yeah.
Moving along this path of slow destruction, let's jump to behavior number 3, constant criticism.
Right. And here we shift a bit. From that passive failure of indifference, we move into something more active. Actively destructive communication.
Okay.
Now, there's a fine line, isn't there, between helpful feedback and just constant criticism. Healthy relationships need space for constructive comments like, hey, when you do Y, it makes me feel X.
Sure, that sounds reasonable.
But constant criticism, that's different. It blurs that line. It mistakes helpful improvement with just relentlessly pointing out flaws.
What kind of flaws are we talking about?
Oh, the sources list common ones. Their clothes, maybe their driving habits, their choice of friends, little personal habits. It becomes less about discussing a specific issue and more about implying that the person themselves is the problem.
And what does that relentless focus on flaws do to the person on the receiving end over time?
It's like emotional demolition. Seriously. When almost every interaction carries a sting, a critique, the person hears one message loud and clear. You're never good enough.
Oh, that's harsh.
It kills their self-worth. It kills their confidence. And think about it. If you can't feel safe or accepted in your own home with your partner, what do?
You pull back. You retreat.
Exactly. You start hiding things, maybe stop sharing vulnerability. That emotional distance becomes a survival mechanism. You learn to associate your partner with feeling inadequate or ashamed.
It turns the relationship into an emotional minefield, doesn't it? If you're constantly tiptoeing, eventually you just start moving forward at all.
You do. You just freeze. And the insight here from the sources is actually quite almost poetic, like you said earlier. It reminds us that a powerful definition of love isn't about finding some perfect person and celebrating their perfection. It's about seeing an imperfect person perfectly.
Seeing an perfect person perfectly. I like that.
It means embracing the quirks, the little stumbles, the flaws, not treating your partner like some kind of ongoing project that needs constant fixing to meet your standards.
And that failure to appreciate the person you actually have, that often leads right into the next point, doesn't it? Behavior number 6. Comparing your partner to others.
Yes, it does. And this one is singled out because it carries a particularly nasty kind of poison. It feels like a deep betrayal.
How so?
Well, whether you're talking about an ex's career success, or maybe your friend's super organized spouse, or even those perfect-looking couples you see plastered all over social media.
Right.
When you use those comparisons against your partner, you're basically using them as a weapon. You're sending a clear signal. The person right here beside me is somehow defective.
Ouch. Yeah, the sting of that must be really deep because it's so personal. You're not just saying, oh, I wish our house was bigger. You're effectively saying, I wish you were different.
Exactly. When you say, or even just imply, why can't you be more like X? You're not motivating them. You're crushing their self-esteem. And maybe even more importantly, you're destroying their sense of safety with you. The research highlights a real irony here, too. Comparison acts like a cognitive filter.
How do you mean?
You get so focused on some fantasy, the perfect X, the perfect online profile, that you become completely blind to the actual unique good qualities of the real complex person you fell in love with in the first place.
You lose sight of what you actually have.
You sacrifice the real connection you have for, well, for a ghost, for an ideal that doesn't exist.
Wow. Okay, that whole sequence, losing focus, lack of appreciation, the comparisons, it all seems to funnel perfectly into behavior number 10, which kind of sums up this whole section. Lack of effort or just plain indifference.
Yes. This is where we really see love slide from being an active verb, something you do, into just a passive noun, a state you're just in.
What happens when that initial passion cools down and commitment just becomes habit?
Well, in the beginning, the effort feels automatic, doesn't it? You plan dates, maybe elaborate ones. You pay close attention to their needs. You make sacrifices emotionally and physically.
Sure, the chase or the getting to know your phase.
Right. But then, as you get comfortable, as familiarity sets in, people often start to think, consciously or not, okay, I've got them now. They're locked in. And the effort, it just stops.
The surprises dry up. The compliments fade.
The emotional energy gets redirected elsewhere, maybe work, hobbies, kids. It's withdrawn from the relationship itself.
And the fundamental problem there is that relationships just aren't self-sustaining, are they? They don't run on autopilot.
No, absolutely not. They're like complex living systems. They need continuous input. Think of it like a garden, not a rock.
A garden, not a rock.
But the material is really clear about this. Things like date nights, little surprises, genuinely complimenting how they look, or something great about their character.
Yeah.
These aren't treated as luxuries, things you fit in if you have time. They're defined specifically as maintenance.
Maintenance. Like changing the oil in your car.
Exactly. Necessary upkeep to fight against that natural tendency towards, well, entropy or drifting apart that happens in long-term relationships. If you stop maintaining your car, eventually it breaks down. The same principle applies to love.
That distinction is so important. Maintenance, not luxury. It's what keeps the engine running smoothly.
It is.
And that leads us to that really quite devastating final statement the sources make about indifference.
Yes, the ultimate destroyer statement. It says, love doesn't die from fighting, it dies from indifference.
Wow. Say that again?
Love doesn't die from fighting, it dies from indifference.
Explain that, because fighting feels destructive.
It can be.
Yeah.
But fighting, arguing, even disagreeing heatedly, it implies you still care. You care enough about the relationship, about the outcome, to actually engage your emotions. Indifference, though, that means the emotional investment is already gone. You don't care enough to argue, you've already mentally or emotionally checked out.
Yeah.
And that signals the real end of the partnership, even if you're still technically together sharing the same house.
It's heavy. It really shifts the focus, doesn't it? Away from just avoiding big fights towards actively preventing that slow drift into not caring.
It absolutely does.
Okay, so we've covered that quiet erosion, the damage caused by indifference. Let's pivot now. Section 2, communication and trust barriers. We're calling these the pressure cookers.
Right, because these behaviors don't just let things fade, they actively block connection and allow tension, suspicion, maybe unspoken resentments to just build and build internally. Until, boom, a massive destructive explosion often follows.
All right, let's look at what builds that pressure. We start with behavior number 2, poor communication.
The research calls this the ultimate silent killer again and again, because when open, honest talk breaks down, our minds naturally try to fill the gap.
And what fills that gap?
Assumptions, guesswork, and, maybe worst of all, that dangerous expectation of mind reading.
Oh, that's the classic trap, isn't it? Your partner does something, it hurts you, but instead of saying, ouch, when you did that, it hurt me, you just stay silent.
Right. You expect them to magically know how you feel. Or even worse, you think, well, if they really love me, they'd just know.
But nobody can do that. We're not psychic.
We're definitely not. And avoiding that honest conversation, because maybe it feels awkward or uncomfortable in the moment, that leads straight to the pressure cooker analogy.
Explain that one.
Every little unspoken hurt, every frustration you swallow down, every minor disappointment, it's like you're sweeping it under a rug. But it doesn't disappear. The tension just builds, silently, unseen.
Until
one day, maybe over something totally minor, they forgot the milk or couldn't find the key. The whole thing just explodes. All that stored up resentment from months, maybe years, just erupts.
So the argument about the keys isn't really about the keys. It's about everything else that wasn't said before.
Exactly. The stored resentment is the real problem, not the trigger.
Okay.
And the source material offers a really vital redefinition of healthy communication here. It's not just about talking more. Plenty of couples talk all the time, but never actually connect.
Right.
Healthy communication is fundamentally about listening better. Really listening to understand and validate where your partner is coming from, their reality. And it's about expressing honestly, but doing it without immediately launching into blame.
It takes maturity, doesn't it?
It does. And recognizing that honesty, delivered with kindness, is always the better route in the long run.
Okay. So if communication is like the air the relationship breathes, and behavior number 4, lack of trust, is the ground it stands on, the foundation.
Absolutely. Without it, everything else crumbles. Trust is completely non-negotiable.
What do the sources say about that?
They state it very clearly. Without trust, no amount of love, no shared history, no legal document can hold things together. Nothing.
Wow. And what are the actions that show trust is gone?
They're usually pretty visible and painful. Things like constant jealousy, that obsessive need to check their phone, their emails, their messages, demanding detailed accounts of where they've been, doubting almost everything they say, even if they offer proof.
That sounds incredibly suffocating for the person being watched like that. It changes the whole dynamic from partnership to surveillance.
That's exactly the word the sources use, surveillance. And that shift is the crisis point. The relationship stops being a safe place, a sanctuary, a bond where you protect each other.
And becomes?
It becomes what the material calls a battlefield. You're no longer partners against the world. You're adversaries, constantly watching each other, suspicious of motives and actions. It's exhausting and deeply corrosive for both people.
And once that basic trust is broken, even by small things maybe, what happens then? Is it easy to get back?
No. The material warns that rebuilding trust takes a monumental effort. It's completely disproportionate to how easily it can be broken.
Why is it so hard?
Because continuous suspicion makes everything look suspicious. Every late text message could be a lie. Every overtime hour could be a cover story. That shared reality, which is the comfort of a long-term bond, It just shatters. The relationship becomes psychologically unbearable.
That makes sense. And it leads directly to the next point, doesn't it? Behavior number 5, avoiding difficult conversations. If you don't trust the foundation, you're definitely not going to want to stress test it with tough topics.
Exactly. And this is a huge mistake many couples make. They think, if we just keep quiet, avoid conflict, things will stay peaceful.
The illusion of peace.
Yes. But the sources are really explicit here. Silence, when there's a real issue festering, is just tension in disguise. You think you're keeping the peace, but really you're just delaying the inevitable conflict. And that delay just lets the resentment harden and grow.
This reminds me of that mold metaphor the material used.
Ah, yes. The mold metaphor. Sweeping problems under the rug doesn't make them vanish. They just grow silently, unseen, like mold.
What kind of issues are we talking about?
Things like ongoing money stress, maybe fundamental disagreements on how to raise kids, different needs or desires sexually, maybe conflicting long-term career ambitions.
Yeah.
If you don't bring those things out into the open, talk about them honestly. They spread. They undermine the whole structure of the relationship from within.
So real relationship stability isn't about never fighting. It's
Yeah.
about being able to navigate the fights safely.
That's it precisely. The research suggests true intimacy comes from creating a space where both partners feel safe enough to talk about anything, even the uncomfortable stuff, without fearing they'll be judged harshly or that it'll cause an explosion.
Healthy couples still argue them.
Oh, absolutely. They argue, but they approach it as a temporary negotiation. The goal is always to get back to understanding each other, not to win or to permanently damage the bond.
Okay. And if you're constantly dodging those tough talks, chances are you're probably engaging in our next behavior too, number 8, dishonesty.
Yes, they often go hand in hand. And dishonesty isn't always, the big dramatic affair like in the movies.
Right.
It can be the small convenience lies. Lies of omission, just not mentioning something. Hiding how you really feel about something. Being deliberately vague about where you were or who you talked to.
Little things.
Little things. But the material stresses that dishonesty, in all its forms, acts like tiny cracks. It chips away at that foundation of trust. It forces your partner eventually to question everything.
Yeah.
And that's the beginning of the end for trust.
I want to dig into this nuance a bit. What about so-called white lies? Telling your partner you like a gift when you secretly hate it, or maybe downplaying a mistake to avoid upsetting them. Where do the sources draw the line?
That's a great question, and the research is actually pretty uncompromising on this. The distinction between a white lie and a lie of omission matters less than the outcome. Both fracture the shared reality you're supposed to be building together.
Sure.
When you lie, even to spare feelings, saying you love the awful sweater, or minimizing how much you spent, you're creating a false reality for your partner. They're operating based on information you know isn't true.
You're managing their reality, not sharing one.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And lies of omission, hiding things,
Yeah.
that might be even worse
Mm-hmm.
because you're creating a secret internal life separate from the relationship. That builds a wall. It creates distance.
And then when they inevitably find out about that small lie that you fibbed about lunch, or maybe exaggerated something at work, it instantly contaminates the bigger things, doesn't it?
It does. They start wondering, well, if they lied about that, what else are they hiding? Are they being honest about their feelings for me? About money? About fidelity?
It poisons the well.
Completely.
Yeah.
And that's the emotional value equation the sources talk about, telling a difficult truth. Actually, I'm really unhappy about X, or I messed up with our savings. That might sting in the moment. It takes real courage.
Yeah.
But dishonesty, that destroys slowly, insidiously, and completely.
Yeah.
Because you have to constantly maintain the lie, build more lies around it. It's an unsustainable burden.
So the conclusion is?
The conclusion is clear. It is always, fundamentally, better to face a difficult truth than a comforting lie. The truth allows you to rebuild on solid ground. The lie just guarantees an eventual collapse.
Okay, we've explored the quiet fading caused by indifference and the explosive potential of blocked communication and trust. Now let's move into section 3. This focuses on emotional violation behaviors we're calling the suffocators.
Right. These are behaviors often rooted in things like control or deep, simmering resentment, and ultimately the failure to provide that essential emotional connection and partnership, especially when it's needed most.
Okay, where do we start?
We begin this section with behavior number 7, emotional neglect. And this is where, according to the sources, some of the most profound loneliness can actually set in.
Defining this seems really important because it's not necessarily about physical absence, is it?
No, not at all. You can be in the same room, even in the same bed, and still be emotionally neglected. The source describes it as things like dismissing your partner's worries with quick, easy platitudes instead of really listening.
Like, oh, don't worry about it.
Exactly. Or forgetting to ask how they're really feeling about that stressful thing at work. Or just being perpetually too busy, too distracted, maybe always on your phone to properly connect.
Hmm.
You're physically present, but emotionally absent.
You're coexisting, sharing space, sharing meals maybe, but you're miles apart emotionally.
That's a perfect description. Think about the partner who's always scrolling through their phone while you're trying to talk over dinner. Or the one who, when you share something difficult, immediately jumps to giving advice instead of just listening.
Mm.
Just holding that space for your stress or your sadness.
Mm.
When those core emotional needs, the need to feel heard, to feel validated, to feel seen, aren't being met consistently, the impact is huge. Devastating, really.
Hmm.
The partner starts to feel invisible.
And to feel invisible inside your most intimate relationship, that has to be the absolute peak of loneliness, right?
It really is. The sources emphasize that feeling invisible to your partner is one of the most isolating feelings a human can experience. You're with the person who's supposed to be your safe harbor, your main confidant, yet you feel completely alone emotionally. The message you receive is basically, your inner world just doesn't matter much to me.
So what's the antidote here? Is it just spending more time together?
Not necessarily just more time. It's about the quality of that time. It's about being present and intentional when you are together.
To quality over quantity.
Exactly. It's not about being joined at the hip 244/7. It's about making sure that the moments you do share truly count. When you consciously put the phone away, look them in the eye, ask a real question about their day, and actually listen to the answer. That's actively fighting emotional neglect. You're making that moment a real connection, not just shared time.
Okay, that makes sense. From neglect, let's move to a behavior that seems almost the opposite, trying to overconnect, but through force. Behavior number 9, controlling behavior.
Right. And the sources offer a really strong, almost clinical analysis of this. Control, like dictating what your partner wears, policing who they're allowed to see, micromanaging their schedule or activities, it's never presented as love.
What is it then?
It's explicitly defined as fear disguised as care.
Fear disguised as care.
Wow. The controlling partner is almost always acting out of their own deep-seated insecurity or anxiety. They're trying to manage their internal turmoil by rigidly managing their partner's external world.
Okay, this is a critical point. We need to explore the line here, because surely in any functioning relationship, there's shared responsibility, right? You coordinate schedules, manage a budget together, plan for the future. Doesn't some mutual influence have to exist?
Absolutely. Mutual influence, coordination, compromise, that's essential. That's partnership.
So where does it cross into control?
Control is different. Control is a demand for submission. It's a violation of the other person's autonomy. It happens when one partner's fears, anxieties, or just plain desires consistently override the other partner's fundamental right to make their own choices, to be their own person.
When the power is fundamentally unbalanced.
Exactly. When one person starts losing their friends or gives up hobbies they love or feels like they're losing their very sense of self just to keep the peace or appease the controlling partner, that's crossed the line. That's suffocation.
So control comes from the controller's insecurity.
Yeah.
And it violates the partner's autonomy.
Precisely. And that's why it's so destructive. It suffocates their individuality, their independence. And the research is crystal clear. Both individuality and independence are vital ingredients for a healthy relationship to actually survive long term.
It seems paradoxical.
It is. The paradox is profound.
Yes.
Giving your partner freedom, trusting them to be themselves, that's what builds security and keeps them wanting to be with you. Trying to control them, to lock them down, that inevitably drives them away. Love needs space to breathe. It thrives in freedom.
Okay. Let's turn now to how the past can poison the present. Behavior number 11, holding grudges.
Ah, yes. This is that destructive cycle of blame that just paralyzes any chance of growth.
Yeah.
Look, everybody makes mistakes. That's just human. It's part of being in a real long-term relationship.
Sure.
But when one partner constantly brings up old arguments or uses something their partner did wrong years ago as ammunition in a completely new, unrelated disagreement today,
Yeah.
that prevents any real forgiveness from ever happening. They're essentially keeping score, maintaining this detailed, active emotional ledger of every single past slight, every perceived failure.
Oof. What's the psychological cost of living with someone who keeps that kind of ledger?
It creates huge emotional distance. How can you feel close to someone who's always ready to remind you of your worst moments? It also means you're not allowed to grow or change because your past mistakes are always held against you.
It sounds like it tracks the couple.
It absolutely does. It traps them in this repeating loop of blame and resentment. They can't move forward together because they're constantly relitigating the past. The focus shifts entirely from solving today's problem to proving who was right back in, 2018.
So the act of forgiving, it isn't just for the other person's benefit or even the relationships. It's almost like a necessary act for your own future peace.
The material highlights this really beautifully. Letting go of a grudge isn't about pretending the mistake didn't happen or didn't hurt. It's about making a conscious choice, choosing peace over pain.
Choosing the relationship over being right.
Exactly. Choosing the health and future of the relationship now over the temporary, frankly, petty satisfaction of your ego that need to be eternally justified. If you can't find a way to forgive, you simply can't move forward together. Period.
Okay. That leads us to the final behavior, number 12. Lack of emotional support. And this feels like it strikes at the very heart of what a partnership is supposed to be.
It really does. It's perhaps the ultimate failure of the relationship's core promise. Relationships, when they work, are fundamentally partnerships. Meaning when life throws its inevitable curveballs, job loss, a family crisis, illness, burnout, your partner is supposed to be your primary source of safety, your support system, the person who helps lift you up when you're struggling.
Right.
But when your partner feels they just can't rely on you during those tough times, when you're absent or maybe dismissive or just unavailable when they're hurting, that emotional bond doesn't just get strained. It can fracture right at its core.
I think it's important to emphasize here, support doesn't always mean jumping in to fix the problem, right? A lot of people, maybe especially men, jump straight into solution mode.
That is such a common mistake, yes, particularly for partners who are naturally geared towards problem solving. But the source material clarifies this really well. True support isn't always about fixing things or offering advice.
What is it then, more often?
More often, it's simply about just being there, listening without interrupting or judging, holding their hand, looking them in the eye and saying sincerely, "I've got you. We'll get through this together. I'm here."
That simple presence.
That simple, unwavering presence. That feeling of reliability. That's what builds resilience in the relationship. That's what keeps your hearts connected when the storms outside are raging. And when that fundamental support is missing, the person realizes, often painfully, that they're essentially facing the world alone. And that realization, that can be the end of any commitment.
Wow, that brings us full circle, really. We've covered these 12 behaviors, whether it's that quiet drift of indifference, the pressure cooker of broken trust, or the suffocation from emotional violation. It seems like it all boils down to one core theme, that relationships aren't just things that happen to us. They aren't passive. They are actively built or maintained or unfortunately sometimes broken by the small, often unconscious choices we make every single day.
Absolutely. That's the core message of change here. The antidote, if you like, to these 12 silent killers starts with awareness. Just knowing about these patterns is the essential first step.
It's not about finding some mythical, perfect relationship with no problems.
No, not at all. Love, real lasting love, is about committing to the effort. It's about maintaining the ability to forgive, deeply forgive. It's about understanding that you have to keep actively investing. And crucially, it requires the emotional courage to look honestly in the mirror.
At your own stuff.
At your own contributions to the friction, yes. And being willing to genuinely say, okay, I see that. I can do better.
Which brings us right to the essential question for you, the listener. Our final provocative thought for today, the so what. We've spent this time identifying these small, sneaky behaviors that act like, well, like that rust we talked about, slowly eating away at the connection. So the question is, which specific daily act of maintenance?
The counter rust.
The counter rust, exactly. Maybe it's a conscious, deliberate thank you for something small your partner does. Maybe it's planning a small surprise to fight that indifference. Or maybe it's finally initiating that difficult, honest conversation you know you've been avoiding. Which one will you prioritize starting today to actively push back against one of these destructive forces in your own life?
Because strong relationships, truly resilient ones, they aren't just found somewhere out there, perfectly formed and waiting for you. They have to be built, brick by intentional brick, through that ongoing effort, that forgiveness, that communication. So start the maintenance. Start